Madam Chair, we are now live.
Good Monday evening, and thanks for joining us here for our CAP meeting. Due to COVID-19 emergency declaration, this meeting of the Ajax Council is being held electronically and live streamed on the town's website. All members of council are in attendance and participating by audio and video teleconference. And senior town staff are available throughout the meeting if council has any questions on the agenda. For members of the public watching from home, bear with us if we encounter any technical difficulties throughout this meeting. I'm now going to call this meeting to order. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest?
No.
Seeing none. I need a motion to adopt the regular minutes of September the 8th, 2020. Thank you, Councillor Bauer and Regional Councillor Lee. And all in favor? Do I have to all in favor? Yes. All in favor? Thank you. And I'm going to go to, we have no questions for public meeting. And our presentation tonight on the draft Carruthers Creek watershed plan, I believe is Sean, right? Sean McCullen?
That's correct.
Okay, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, members of the committee. I'm Sean McCullough. I'm a senior planner with the town. Tonight, I'm here to provide a brief overview of the town's comments on the draft watershed plan and answer any questions that the committee may have. So just really quick, I'll just give an overview of some background on the historical context of the issues, as well as just very briefly touch on the Carruthers Creek watershed plan itself, as well as the scenarios that were evaluated. I'll then touch on just some of the beneficial management recommendations that are outlined in the watershed plan and just highlight some of staff's top comments, and then finally finish it off with some of our next steps. So quickly, just some background. In 2007, a spill was identified in the Lower Carruthers in the Pickering Beach neighborhood, and this spill was quantified in 2009 by the TRCA. The town hired Cole Engineering to complete an environmental assessment to explore options to help contain this spillway in the Lower Carruthers. This report identified a preferred solution, which I will touch on later, and this work was completed in 2012. During this time, the region of Durham was also working on Regional Official Plan Amendment 128, which was the region's growth plan conformity exercise. ROPA 128 was approved by Regional Council in 2009. ROPA 128 was ultimately approved in 2013 by the Ontario Municipal Board. The approved official plan included a policy in Northeast Pickering requiring, among other matters, that a watershed plan be completed for the Carruthers. The town also completed subsequent analysis to evaluate what urban development in the headwaters would do to the preferred solution identified in our EA, and identified that the preferred solution would no longer work, ultimately due to uncertainty surrounding possible development in Northeast Pickering. The preferred solution was not constructed as it's an expensive piece of infrastructure and would not resolve the flooding issues if constructed as currently designed. Work on this watershed plan started in 2015. So the draft Carruthers Creek watershed plan was released in March 2020 of this year for public review and comment. I will not spend too much time discussing the watershed plan, as the TRCA was here on July 27th and gave a good overview. And once again, we'd like to thank the TRCA for taking the time to come and educate members of council and the community on the draft watershed plan. But overall, the watershed plan, it describes the purpose and helps to educate the reader on some of the fundamentals about watershed planning. It provides an overview of the current conditions observed in the watershed, and it provides the results of the scenario analysis that was completed. And then finally, it provides a framework of management recommendations designed to improve the watershed depending on which scenario proceeds. So really quickly, just touching on the land use scenarios. Scenario 1 assumes that all lands are developed as envisioned in the approved official plans. So this would consist predominantly of urban land uses south of Tonson and agricultural uses north of Taunton, as well as some environmental protection woven throughout. Staff consider this to be a business as usual case. Scenario 2 assumes that the majority of the land uses identified in Scenario 1, as well as the protection of an enhanced natural heritage system that was identified through the technical work of the watershed plan. Staff consider this to be an improved case for the watershed and has the greatest benefit to the watershed. Scenario 3 assumes scenarios 1 and 2 are implemented, with the exception that the agricultural lands in the headwaters are developed for urban development. Staff consider this to be a degraded case, as the watershed plan identified deterioration of subwatershed quality. There's also a worst case scenario that is also possible and was not evaluated, but it's important to understand. This worst case scenario could result if portions of the enhanced natural heritage system are developed instead of protected, likely resulting in further degraded habitat quality and additional flood levels due to increased imperviousness. So overall, like I mentioned, there are many beneficial management recommendations in the watershed plan, regardless of which scenario proceeds. So many of these positive management recommendations are discussed in attachment 1 of the report. However, just to give a few quick examples, some require development and redevelopment to minimize impervious surfaces. There are management recommendations discussing improving excess soil policies, as well as bylaws and educating the public on these. Protecting, enhancing, and restoring the enhanced natural heritage system and the water resource system. Working with the agricultural community to mitigate and reduce agricultural runoff. Identify, avoid, protect, and implement mitigation measures for the protection of aquatic species such as the red-side dace, as well as prioritize the restoration of terrestrial sites within the watershed. Now to discuss some of our key comments. Management recommendation 1.1.3 requires that if scenario 3 is to proceed, that a terms of reference is to be completed requiring certain items to be completed during the subwatershed planning. This is to include a hydraulic assessment, which is important to determine new floodlines and identify which properties or roads would be impacted. It also needs to determine how natural hazards, which are areas that would be impacted by flooding, would be assessed and mitigated. This is important as it would need to demonstrate that the risk of flooding would not increase within the watershed. It also identifies how the natural heritage system and the water resource systems will be protected, as well as how water quality and quantity will be protected. Currently, the requirement to complete the terms of reference is placed on the region with input from the town, the city of Pickering, as well as the TRCA. To strengthen this and to maintain Ajax's interest in the matter, staff would like to see a requirement to have agreement amongst the region, the town, the city, and the TRCA on all components of the terms of reference. So as discussed, the town completed and fully funded one EA, which evaluated a number of options. So this looked at a do nothing option, which is always the case in an EA. It looked at an option for lowering the Crothers, which included dredging a portion. There was an upgrade to the Shoal Point Bridge, which was evaluated, as well as a flood control landform or a berm that could be constructed, and as well as several other management options. The preferred solution was a combination of the flood control landform, as well as the lowering of the portion of the creek. This estimated cost in 2012 was approximately 1.8 to 2 million, without factoring in land acquisition cost. Under scenarios 1 and 2, the preferred solution would help resolve the existing flooding issue. If scenario 3 were to proceed, this would no longer be an option as the berm would be overtopped, and this would require a new EA to evaluate additional options. So that leads us into management recommendation 1.3.3, which speaks to reopening this EA. Staff are of the opinion that the cost of the EA and the implementation of the preferred solution should be paid for by the development community in Northeast Pickering if scenario 3 is to proceed. Therefore, staff are recommending that this management recommendation be updated to assign payment obligations. Additionally, this work should be completed prior to planning approvals. The management recommendation also speaks to the application of regional controls in the headwaters. These are larger stormwater infrastructure, such as larger storm ponds than you would traditionally see, designed to manage the regional storm, which is also in this area is Hurricane Hazel. Staff support the use of regional controls if scenario 3 were to proceed, and would like to see them as offline controls, meaning that they would be located on development land rather than using the valley to manage the storm, which can have a negative impact on the valley and the natural heritage system within it if you were to use that system. So finally, the last one that I'll touch on today is management recommendation 3.1.1, which identifies that municipalities and the TRCA are to protect, enhance, and restore the enhanced natural heritage system. The enhanced NHS was identified using a robust methodology to identify features such as creeks, wetlands, and woodlots, and incorporating potential natural cover areas designed to improve the features and create connections to improve the overall natural heritage system. This enhanced natural heritage system was used in the scenario evaluation. If it's not protected, the watershed could degrade beyond what was identified in scenario 3. So as written, municipalities could use different techniques to protect the enhanced natural heritage system. Ajax uses an environmental protection designation, whereas others may use an overlay in their official plan. Designating the enhanced NHS provides the greatest level of protection and is consistent with the approach required by the province to protect the provincial NHS in expanded settlement areas. And we're also just looking to strengthen the wording of some of these designations. Staff are recommending that to protect the system, the system identified in the watershed plan. Staff also proposed other comments to help strengthen the watershed, and those have been identified in attachment 1. So finally, just to discuss what's next. So our comments and council's resolution following the next council meeting will be sent to the TRCA for their consideration in the final plan. Pickering has completed a similar exercise. The public comment period remains open and comments can be submitted on the TRCA's website. Staff will continue to work with the TRCA to host an in-person open house meeting as COVID-19 may permit. And the final watershed plan will be presented to the regional and area municipal councils as well as the TRCA board once it's been completed. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I also have Stev Andis, acting manager of planning with me, as well as Stephen Ruddy, acting manager of engineering and transportation.
Thank you very much for your report. I have only seen Mayor Collier's hand. Is there anyone else that has, okay, regional dies, okay. Mayor Collier first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. McCullough, and thank you for the presentation. Just to be clear, the public open house was supposed to happen back in June, but we had a resolution passed at the region, basically pushing that off until such time as all states of emergency have been lifted. So technically, I guess that public process could be far off in the future. Is that accurate?
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, that's correct. The original open house was, I believe, yes, early June or the end of April. And it could remain open based on the resolution that was passed at Regional Council.
Okay, so we control that, which is a good thing. I'm just so has any other municipality provided their comments yet? Do we know?
Through you, Madam Chair, the City of Pickering released a report 2 or 3 weeks ago outlining their comments.
Okay. I don't know what those are. What are your feelings? I mean, we're the two most affected.
Through you, Madam Chair. So they had primarily 3 major comments. One comment was that they did not agree with the way that the hydrology impact in the regional storm was being presented in the watershed plan. So that was that 77% increase. They had another comment that they wanted clarification on how what the natural heritage system could look like, that it could be a different size and composition. And they indicated that they thought that the natural heritage system was somewhat large compared to their official plan. And then finally, there was a management recommendation dealing with additional monitoring within the watershed.
Okay. To the first comment that they had, I mean, that can't be established until the hydrology study or assessment is actually done.
So
Is that
through
right?
through you,
I
Madam
mean,
Chair.
that might be their comments, but they don't actually know for sure until the hydrology.
Through you, Madam Chair. So the hydrology was actually completed as part of this study. That's the first step, and they're just concerned on the way that the information is being presented. So we have we have the hydrology study that outlines at, I would call them checkpoints along the watershed. So it'd be Taunton Road, Roslyn Road, and it outlines at those individual locations as to what the anticipated increase would be if it's unmitigated. I think what you're thinking is the next step would be the hydraulic assessment, which then actually
That's
takes
what I'm
that
thinking.
it takes that information and shows how the water is going to move throughout the watershed. That's more complex.
Okay, but the hydraulic assessment would show whether their concern is warranted or whether their point is warranted or not. I mean, we just don't know until that assessment is done.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, but their concern related to the hydrologic information, the work that had already been done. So they're just concerned with there's a number in the watershed plan that indicates that there'll be an increase of 77%.
Yep.
They just don't like how that's being presented.
Well, I asked questions to that when the TRCA was giving their presentation to HIS Council on, since any development would require more modern stormwater technology to be implemented, why would they do their studies based on zero stormwater management? And I don't know. I wasn't real satisfied with the answer, but I tend to agree with that. That probably is a high number, and we should be looking at it with the stormwater management in place. But that's something for another day. So when this report comes back, I guess this will be probably next year before this public process is done. One of the recommendations, 1.1.3, is to establish, you said, terms of reference to look at a hydraulic assessment, I wrote down. But I thought this was automatically required. Does this have to be in the terms of reference, or isn't this an automatic requirement?
Through you, Madam Chair, this would normally be required. We're just ensuring that we are involved in the process as it is developed. So this would always be required because the developer has to demonstrate that there would be no downstream flooding, and this would be their mechanism to do that.
Okay. I just, this isn't really a question, just the letter that I sent when the developer brought out the minister's zoning order requested three things, three commitments from them. One was to pay for an update to our environmental assessment, which is very important. It's 10 years old. We do need to update it and see what the situation is today. The second was the hydrology assessment, again, funded through the developer. And the third was that they pay for any remediation methods that may come out of that. And we did get a response that committed to those, or I thought it committed to those. Are you able to speak to, does that at all help with any of our concerns by having that written commitment?
Through you, Madam Chair, I would agree that that would help with those concerns. That is what we're looking for ultimately, is those items, should scenario 3 proceed, we are looking for those items to be paid for by the development community. I think we're just looking for it to be written down and documented in this watershed plan and documented throughout the process to ensure that happens.
Okay, my only concern with that also is that that's just one developer, and there could be many developers on this property potentially. So I think we've got the commitment from the biggest one, but we would need to make sure that we get the rest through this terms of reference. So I do support the staff recommendations, and thank you very much, Mr. McCullough, for answering my questions. Thank you, Chair.
Regional Councillor Dyes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your report. It was interesting and thorough. I know that we had TRCA come previously, and that's helped clarify a few things through your report. I'm really pleased to see the comment on page 22 or 21 about the agreement with TRCA and the town to enforce illegal dumping in some cases, or excess soil on the greenbelt lands on the headwaters, because that's become a real issue. So I guess my question to you is, do we know when, has there been discussion as to when that partnership can happen?
Through you, Madam Chair, The town, both the town and I know the city of Pickering recently updated their fill bylaw. The town was working on updating our bylaw as well. There's also
Mhm.
been some updates at the provincial level in terms of some of the uh, legislation that is out there. There's nothing preventing us from starting work or continuing our work, ensuring that we have a strong system to help manage and regulate excess soil. Uh, is there anything, Steve Ruddy? Is there anything else that you can add to that?
Yes, through the chair. We've been working very closely with TRCA and CLOCA for that matter in issues where we have either illegal dumping or fill within the floodplain by private landowners without permit or authorization, and we'll continue doing exactly that.
Well, thank you for that. I know that it's been a real challenge for our bylaw services because there's a lot of it going on.
Can't hear Joanne. Is she, you guys?
I can't either. I think she's got a.
Not me, right?
No, she dropped off.
Okay. Should we just give her a minute? Councillor Bauer, did you have a question?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Oh, here she comes. I can
Okay.
wait.
I'm sorry about that.
No problem.
And I don't know where I was when you couldn't hear me. I don't want to repeat everything, but we really need some assistance. Our bylaw can't handle the volume of soil dumping in the area. And on our tour, I saw firsthand what the dumping had done in changing the whole landscape. It had actually been dumped on a wetland, and it washed out a road when they had a major storm, which is what the taxpayers pay for. So it's a real issue everywhere in the Greenbelt. So I'm really pleased to see that we're working on that. The other thing that came to mind was on page 22, which was, the discussion on retrofitting outdated stormwater infrastructure. And it's outdated stormwater infrastructure. And is that something that we're going to have to budget for in future? I know we do a little bit now, but to a bigger degree, larger degree.
Through you, Madam Chair, that's another question that I will send over to Stephen Ruddy.
Okay, thank you.
Through the chair, yes, there's plenty of opportunities for increasing the stormwater management that we provide to protect the natural environment and to protect against flooding. When we're looking at this spill through the Pickering Beach neighborhood and what the flows from a potential development in Northeast Pickering are going to do, we have to remember that when we're analyzing the regional storm, we assume that all ponds are already full. So when we're analyzing, we really can't have that watershed wide impact just by retrofitting the ponds we have.
Thank you for that. And that's interesting you say that, because at a TRCA meeting, there was a report on the Black Creek and the amount of cost in retrofitting, doing bridge expansions and channel widening and various things over time that had started to, well, they degrade, but were also, outdated. We know we have better technology now. We know more. And the bill for that, or the cost of that, was 56 million. So it was just sort of an awakening that once you start putting this infrastructure in, you have to maintain it and look after it, and there's a huge cost to that over time. The only other thing I wanted to ask is with regards to insurance, when we talk about educating property owners in high flood risk areas, are they having difficulty, do you know, in getting insurance now?
Through you, Madam Chair. I'm unsure if our residents in Ajax are experiencing difficulty getting insurance, but I have been I have seen in the news and I have seen in other locations that that is becoming a growing concern, and insurance companies are starting to catch on. So if it isn't an issue currently, I could see it becoming an issue in the future.
Okay, thank you for that. And just, I do agree with your comment on the consistent benchmarking. I thought that was interesting. So thank you for your report. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Regional Councillor Dyes. Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Chair. Most of my questions have been answered, but thank you, Mr. McCullough, for this report. It's very interesting. I'm really learning a lot. So I did have a couple questions. So when you talked about the MR 1.13 and you made the comment that the recommendation should be revised for this terms of reference to require agreement on all the components between the region, TRCA, Town of Ajax, and City of Pickering. I'm just curious, do you, is it too early to tell, or do you know, do we seem to all be close to agreement currently, or are there some real hot button items where you don't expect us to agree?
So through you, Madam Chair. So the region and the TRC and the city, we've all been working very closely together, and they have all been very good with us. The preparation of this terms of reference, which this management recommendation speaks to, has not started yet. However, I think generally we're in agreement with a lot of the components that would be required. We just want to ensure that when it comes time to preparing this terms of reference, that we're at the table and that agreement is required, and that we continue to work together.
Okay, great, thank you. And I also noticed that during the presentation and in the report, it makes reference to depending on which scenario will proceed. And how is that determined? Who will decide which scenario will proceed?
So through you, Madam Chair, it's a good question. It's a big process. So currently, right now, the region is undertaking their municipal comprehensive review. And through that process, that will determine whether or not development occurs in Northeast Pickering. The watershed plan is one component that will be used to evaluate which lands get added. One of the biggest things that will happen as part of that MCR process is called a land needs assessment. So that will look at how much land is needed to accommodate the forecast growth outlined in the growth plan to 2051. And then it's the region's job to determine if land is needed, where are the best locations to start locating that land. And they will start relying on information such as the watershed plan, as well as other reports and studies like agricultural impact assessments or water and wastewater plans to start looking at where those locations become. So that's the process that will determine whether or not development occurs in Northeast Pickering.
Very interesting, thank you. And I just wanted to make a comment that I thought on page 19, the discussion about a hydraulic assessment and what it is and the markings of sort of what buildings or what's affected in Ajax for flooding. I thought that was really, really interesting and really important for us to know this information. So it's just something I wanted to comment on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. I haven't seen anybody else's hand. Have I missed anybody? Okay. Thank you, Sean, for your report. Detailed as usual. We really appreciate it. I believe we have a fairly lengthy motion. Is that correct? Yeah, here we go. So
I'll move the recommendations if you like, Madam Chair.
okay, so members of council don't need me to read it. So we have Mayor Collier, Regional Councillor Lee seconding it. If there's any further questions, no? All in favor? Excellent. Thank you very much. It all passes.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I can't believe it. It's 7:30 and I'm calling for the adjournment. Okay, I want it on record. Of course it is because this is recorded, but this is the shortest meeting that we've ever had. Councillor Bauer, seconded by Councillor Tyler Moran. All in favor of adjournment? Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone.
Hey, everybody stay on the call for the special counsel, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Sean.
Good job, Marilyn.
That's the shortest this term, Marilyn.
That's
We've
pretty good.
We've had some 2-minute cap meetings in the past.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. I think Colleen shared the shortest one ever, which was, I mean, I think it was under a minute. It was crazy.
Mr.
You
Mayor,
really
we
didn't
can
have to
begin
sit
the
down.
special council now if you like.
Give me 5 minutes, Alex, just to get the resolutions done, please.
All right, we will take a brief recess.
Thank you.
Ash, now you need to put your jacket on.
Mr. Mayor, we're now live.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. This is, sorry, just let me bring this up. We've already read the emergency declaration, so I'll now call this meeting to order. I'll start with the land acknowledgement. We would like to begin this meeting by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is situated within the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island, the Chippewas of the Anishinaabeg, known today as the Williams Treaties First Nations. This place is and will continue to be home to Indigenous peoples. Let us move forward together with kindness and respect. Does any member of council have any declaration of pecuniary interest? Okay, seeing and hearing none, thank you. Please note, Mr. Clerk. We have one departmental report. Actually, before we go to departmental reports, there is one motion we have coming forward regarding the Ajax Pickering Hospital, and I have a motion to suspend the rules of procedure to allow that motion. Moved by Councillor Lee, second by Councillor Tyler Morin, that the rules of procedure be suspended in order to introduce a motion without notice to a special meeting of council regarding Lakeridge Health funding. Now, since this is a special meeting, this is required to be unanimous, so I'll ask Mr. Clerk for a recorded vote, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the motion to suspend the rules of procedure to introduce a motion to a special meeting of council, please state your position in favor or opposed. Councillor Bauer,
In favor.
Regional Councillor Crawford,
In favor.
Regional Councillor Dyes,
In favor?
Councillor Khan,
In favor.
Regional Councillor Lee,
In favor.
Councillor Tyler Morin,
In favor.
Mayor Collier.
In favor. That carries unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to departmental reports, we have one report, item 3.1, Pickering Village Community Improvement Plan suspensions. Mr. Romanowski and Mr. Sawchuk, whenever you're ready, please.
Through the mayor to council, we have no presentation this evening. The report's before you for your consideration. We're here to, myself and Stev Andis are on the line to answer any questions that you have in relation to the recommendations being put forward within this report. Quite simply, we're looking to suspend the Pickering Village CIP program, specifically with regards to the redevelopment incentive programs, as well as extend the suspension for the downtown community improvement plan from the end of this year, 2020, to the end of 2021. This is also in relation, the main reason for this coming to a special council meeting in an expeditious way is that staff are in the finance department are preparing for development charges bylaw review, and through that, it makes the most sense to review all our CIPs through this prior to these changes being made.
Thank you for that explanation, Mr. Romanowski. Does any member of council have any questions for our planning departments? Seeing none. Perfect explanation, Mr. Romanowski. Thank you. I'll just point out that this is something that I think when we brought out our CIPs, the climate was quite a bit different as far as redeveloping our downtowns in the village, and incentives were needed at the time. I don't know that we're still there, so I'm glad to see that we are doing this review because this is a significant cost to the taxpayer. So if there's nothing further, I will call for the vote. We have moved by Councillor Tyler Morin, second by Councillor Crawford, that the redevelopment incentive program, redevelopment tax rebate program, planning and development fees rebate program, development charge exemption reduction program, and reduced parkland dedication requirements program in the Pickering Village Community Improvement Plan be suspended until December 31st, 2021. That the existing program suspensions relating to the downtown CIP be extended from December 31st, 2020 to 2021. That staff be authorized to expand the scope of forthcoming public consultations on DC Bylaw 50-2018 to consider amendments relating to the Pickering Village CIP. And 4, that staff be authorized to review the Pickering Village Community Improvement Plan in concert with the Downtown Community Improvement Plan to determine the continued appropriateness and feasibility of both CIPs, including a review of funding criteria, project areas, and any other applicable parameters. Anybody wish to speak to the motion? Seeing no hands, those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, could you bring up the motion, please? And I will relinquish the chair to Regional Councillor Dyes for this portion of the meeting. We have a motion before you, moved by myself, second by Regional Councillor Crawford. I won't read the entire thing. I did distribute it to council in advance, and I do apologize for having to bring it at this meeting, but this is time sensitive as these discussions are ongoing. And I'll just speak to it very quickly, please, Madam Chair. Just so council knows, yesterday I was approached by representatives from the doctors at Lakeridge Health in Ajax regarding some proposed changes to the funding model. This group is made up of the department heads of pretty much, I don't know all the departments, but I assume all the departments or most of the departments. It was a fairly lengthy list. And the concern was with the potential changes to the ambulatory care unit, which is a unit which includes not just the emerge, but other things like the fracture clinic, shoulder clinic, day surgeries, and that type of care, that there was talk of reducing by 20%. I don't have this in writing from Lakeridge Health. I did reach out to the acting CEO yesterday, and I got a confirmation email today saying they are having the discussions. No decisions have been made. I know Councillor Dyes and probably many other of you can speak to what we've experienced over the last many years. Things like when our birthing unit was moved to Centenary when we were part of Rouge Valley, when mental health beds were moved to Centennial. And once things are done and once decisions are made, it makes it very difficult to change those decisions afterwards. So I felt it important that this motion come forward to support our doctors, nurses, and support care workers at Lakeridge Health that do such a great job for us in our community, to just send a message to the senior management team at Lakeridge that the importance of these services and the importance of these services not be reduced. That would have enormous effect of many of our residents that rely on these services. We already are near capacity, and to cut that back would cause a lot of problems. So I feel it's important that we send this message, and that's all this is. It's just requesting that Lakeridge Health not reduce service. And by reduced service, what they're talking about, from my understanding from the medical staff, is reducing nurses and the clerks that perform the admin works for these units, which would make things, which would definitely slow things down. So I will leave it at that. I'll leave it at that, and I will ask for your support and record a vote, please. Thank you.
So does any members of council have any questions on this motion? And you might have to shout it out because I haven't got all your photographs on my screen. Is there no questions?
No questions.
Madam Chair, it's Marilyn.
Yep.
Through you to the mayor. So the funding cut is within the hospital?
That's my understanding from the doctors. Is senior management has given direction that it's just I'm supposing it's like we do our budgets. So council is the board basically, but senior management puts together their budgets for each of their departments and then it goes through finance, and the budget as a whole is approved by us. I imagine it's a similar process, although I'm not absolutely certain. So my understanding is the department heads were requested to basically fine 20%. And my understanding is the direction was given for a 20% reduction across Lake Ridge Health as a whole, and 60 odd percent of that is going to be at the Ajax Pickering. So I don't know how that was established, but that was the numbers I was given. I did send that to the CEO, and I did not get a contrary. So I did not get an email back saying, no, this isn't happening. I got an email back saying they're looking at all, they're going through the process right now. So yeah, that's all I know about this.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry to be vague, but that's the information I have.
There any other questions? So if I may, or I take it, like you say, Mayor Collier, they're going through the budget process like we would do as well. Now, my understanding has always been with healthcare, we're very far behind. And even though we've had a top up by the province not too long ago, it still didn't bring us back to where we should be now because it's been so long in a deficit position. So I'm not surprised that they're looking for some sort of fix to this, as we know it's illegal to carry on a deficit.
Mhm.
So I'm cautious about it because the senior management team isn't necessarily going to make the decision, are they? Wouldn't it be the board of Lake Ridge Health? Because there's more than one hospital involved.
Yeah, very well. I assume the question's
Okay.
to me. Very well could be the board that ultimately will make the decision.
So if they're all going to work together, I don't have a problem with that. And I think they do that anyway. Actually, they include all the doctors and the nurses to have comment on that. But I think it's probably the board that makes a decision.
Yeah, we've
So,
left it fairly broad at leadership of Lake Ridge Health.
okay. All right. So then call the vote. All in favor? And
Oh, I
again,
did ask for a recorded vote, Mr.
you want a
Clerk.
recorded vote, Mr. Clerk? Good. I can't see everybody.
On the motion before council, please state your position in favor or opposed. Mayor Collier,
In favor.
Councillor Bauer,
In favor?
Regional Councillor Crawford,
In favor?
Councillor Khan,
In favor?
Regional Councillor Lee,
In favor?
Councillor Tyler Morin,
In favor.
Regional Councillor Dyes.
In favor? Back to you, Mr. Mayor.
That carries. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Dyes. Moving on to the confirming bylaw, moved by Councillor Bauer, second by Councillor Khan. The bylaw number 39-2020 being, sorry, just let me go down. Yeah. Being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council of the Corporation of the Town of Ajax at a special meeting held on October 5th, 2020, be read a first, second, third time and passed. Questions or comments on the bylaws? Being none, those in favor? Any opposed? I see no hands, that's carried. And finally, moved by Councillor Dyes, second by Councillor Lee, that the October 5th, 2020 special meeting of the Council of the Town of Ajax be adjourned. Those in favor? Any opposed? No, that's carried.